Okay, we're going to focus on the use of the radio today. Here's an example of the sort of radio that you might find in a glider or a motor glider. It doesn't take up much space on the instrument panel. It does extend quite far back behind the instrument panel, but it means that you can get a number of other instruments next to it in a small space. To make it work, first of all we've got to make sure the electrics are turned on. Usually in the glider there's a need to connect the battery, there's a need usually to throw a switch to put the electrical supply on. In this case it's this switch here, which is now in the on position, and there's also a second switch down here for the avionics, which I'm going to switch on. I'm actually not so sure which of those two switches it is. It's the end one there, and then when I press the on button, hopefully it will come to life. So this particular model I believe is a Trig KRT2, and you can see that there are two frequencies indicated there. 123.815, which is our frequency here at Rougheth West, and a secondary standby frequency 133.380, which is the Leeming zone frequency. So the one at the top is the active one at the moment, and the one at the bottom is the standby frequency. We have a flip-flop switch of some sort on most radios. This one here, it's got an up and a down arrow. If I press that, they change places, so the active frequency is now Leeming 133.380, and the bottom one is back to Rougheth. So the Rougheth radio calls won't come through in that setting. And what we would normally do when we're in flight is set up on the standby the next frequency that we'd need along the way. So it's important to have written them down somewhere so that you can set them up as you move around the countryside. On this particular device there's a couple of ways in which you can set the next frequency. The easiest way is to press the rotary switch here, and then that highlights the 2-3 in 123. So if I wanted, for example, Humberside's frequency 119.130, press that and then reduce that to 19, press it again, and I can move the next digit along just after the decimal point to 1, and then press it again and it highlights the last two digits behind the decimal point, and I can take that up to 30. So that's now set, and the more faint figures will eventually become bold. So 119.130 is now set on the bottom. I don't have to alter the step increment, the steps between each frequency. On this particular radio it does it automatically. So 119.130, if I need the next frequency I can just put it in without altering the steps. On some other radios we do need to do that, and we'll show you that on another device. The other way of selecting a frequency, oh by the way, we'll just press the flip-flop switch and make 119.130 the active one. When nothing's highlighted in the numbers, if I just twiddle the knob I can alter the volume. I get a volume indication just here, volume 11, and volume 17, and when you're listening you can just hear that. When you first switch it on, have it on a reasonably high volume setting, so that when you do your radio check, if you don't get a response, it's not because you've got the volume turned down. In this radio it happens to have some memories, so if I press mem, there's Hinton on the Hedges frequency there, Kemble, because this aircraft came from the Oxfordshire area, Gloucester approach, Gloucester Atis, Gloucester Tower, Enstone, Bryce zone. So let's go to Enstone, and just by pressing the memory and then going through the list of entries in there, I can get to one that's already been preset. So Enstone 129.880, and again pressing the flip-flop switch will make that active. There's a couple of other things we can use on here, and the main one that you need to know about is the dual switch. So this is a dual watch radio. So if I have it on dual, it will prioritize the top frequency, 129.880. If I talk on the radio, it will transmit on Enstone's frequency. If Enstone speak, it will transmit on, it will come through from Enstone. But if Enstone aren't talking to me, but Humberside happen to be, I know they're not too close together, but Humberside happen to be, then it would automatically let me listen to what Humberside was saying. But if Enstone then said something, then Enstone would get priority. So it's a dual watch, it watches two frequencies at the same time. And when we're taking off from Ruffeth, not a bad idea to have Ruffeth East set as the second frequency and have it on dual mode, and then if anybody's taking off from there or coming in, you can probably hear them, and then you can take it off dual mode just by pressing the button when you get airborne. So quite a few functions on that particular radio. I'll show you another one in due course. So here are two devices more typical of the type that you will find in a glider. The one on the left is the radio, happens to be in our motorglider Whiskey Delta, but it's very typical of the type that you'll have in a glider. And on the right is its twin sister, which is the transponder, again typical of the ones that you would have in a glider. And increasingly cross-country pilots are equipping their gliders with transponders. As with any electronic device, there should be somewhere in the system a master switch. It's usually just a matter of connecting the battery and turning on a switch in a glider. In this particular aeroplane, the master switch is here, and there's an additional switch, I think, for the radio over here. And then you don't have to use the radio switches all the time. In fact, although it says radio on that switch I've just used, it actually powers both the transponder and the radio itself. Additionally, in this sort of aircraft, the radio acts as a link between the two pilots, because it's side-by-side two-seater, so it has an intercom switch as well. So the intercom enables you to talk to each other without actually transmitting, but that's not a nicety that you need to worry about. So as you can see, this trig radio has got two frequencies set. The one on the top is our frequency, 123.815, and the one at the bottom is the standby frequency. It's not actually transmitting or receiving on that frequency at the moment. 125.475 is the northern frequency for London Information, which is a flight information service. To use the radio, to select a frequency, on this there's really only, well, no, there are two methods, but let me show you the obvious one. We can use this knob here, which is actually two knobs. You can see that it's got a big grip at the bottom and a narrower grip at the top. Basically, the big knob is for the big numbers and the little knob is for the little numbers. So if I want to select a frequency, so the one I'm going to select is Leeds East, I think. All I need to do is to dial up the big numbers with the big knob, the little numbers with the little knob, and their frequency is 120.710. You'll notice, however, that there's a little indication in the bottom right hand corner, and it says 25k, and that means that as you turn the knob, it will increase the frequency in increments of 25 kilohertz, which, because this is in a megahertz display, it'll go up 0.25 at the end. So if I turn the little knob once, it goes up 25, the next one 25, the next one 25, and so on. But we changed, actually, most of the frequencies in the country changed quite a few years ago now to a separation of 8.33. So if I press the push step button, I know it's upside down, but you can see that it says push step, it changes that to 8.33. And so now when I turn the knob, it goes up in smaller increments. They round off the 8.33 so that you can get different sets of numbers. So if I want 120.710, which is Leeds East's frequency, then turn the big knob, 120, and then turn the little knob, and it does all the points after the decimal until we get 710, hopefully. And there we go, 120.710. That is still the standby frequency. So if I want that to be the active frequency, press this flip-flop switch here, and they change places. And so you can set up the frequency that you're going to need next in the standby, and then when you're ready, just press that button and it's there. It's much better to be organized like that, so you've got written down somewhere, maybe on your chart, maybe on your electronic device, maybe just on a piece of paper, the frequencies that you need to use, and you're always one step ahead. You're always setting up the frequency for the next station that you need to call before you actually need it. Then you just got to press the button. If you've got a lot of feedback, and I can't demonstrate it at the moment because nobody's on the radio, but if you've got a lot of feedback or a lot of background noise, more to the point, so you're listening in and all you can hear is all the time, or when somebody speaks you've got that in the background, you've got a squelch button, and on this it works quite instinctively really. All you've got to do is to press this when there's background noise is apparent, and it should filter that out for you. The threshold has to be altered using some of the sort of programming functions of the radio, so we usually let our electronic people deal with that. So sometimes it screens it out, sometimes it doesn't, but the squelch button should screen out the background noise, the continuous background noise. Any sudden splurts of background noise it might not pick up, or might not be able to screen, but most of that background noise is screened out with the squelch button. And if you're not pressing that, then that's the volume control. Okay, like the other radio that I showed you, this also has a dual watch frequency. It's called monitor, and it also has some memory facilities, but it doesn't tell you what the memories are. It just says 1, 2, 3, 4, so you've got to remember what they are, so it's less useful from that point of view.